Madam Secretary, roll call.
Trustee Gibson King.
Present.
Trustee Gomez.
Present.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Present.
Trustee Smith.
Present.
Madam President Taylor.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. McNulty. I'm sorry, Dr. Bournet, sorry about that.
What did you call her? Ooh, Lord. What did you call her?
I apologize. I was looking at an email, but it was too old, but I apologize. I called him.
Where we at?
Good evening again, Board of Trustees.
Oh, resignation.
Tonight's work session, we've invited one of our partners, Mazzy Education LLC, to come and present to the board an update on all of our federal grants, specifically Title I, II, and IV. And I will turn it over to Dr. Williamson and his associate.
Thank you, Dr. Bournet. Can you all hear me okay? Yes? Okay, great. So thank you for the invite, Dr. Bournet and trustees. I look forward to sharing some information with you all. So in front of you, we have placed a handout. Glad to go over it in greater detail, but this really just highlights the work that has been completed the past couple of months that we have returned to work with you all. And then we can update towards the future as well, should you consider further support. So on the front page really just has an overview of the needs and goals. Obviously, there's, as a school district, there's a lot of federal funding that flows through the school district. And so our goal is to always work with the school and district leaders to utilize the money to make a difference for kids. So that's why we're here, and we want to maximize the money to the greatest extent possible. If you have the flyer in front of you, if you'll flip over to the back. So this has a somewhat high-level overview of really what we've been doing the past couple months, and then work that is to come, that is needed as well. So the left-hand side of that column has, really prior to us starting in December, the summary of what I would describe the work had happened July, August, and so on in the fall was really to work with establishing needs and allowability and funding asks. Once we came on board in December, the grant, really none of the grants have been approved at that point, which at that point in the year, you normally would like to see them approved well before then. So we had worked with your school and district leaders to get those wrapped up as quickly as possible so that they would get into the state's hands, so that we could get our activities approved, so that we could carry out the programming, the professional development, and so on. So that's really happened the past couple of months that we've been working with you all, getting those revised and turned back in. If you're familiar with these grants, there's end of year reporting as well. So we made sure all of the old ones were closed out so that we would be in good standing there. So that would be the present column the past 2 months. The far right-hand column of that sheet really just emphasizes things that are to come. And so there are amendments that need to be turned in to maximize funding streams that are about to expire, making sure that the compliance pieces with the grants are ready to go, and then working towards already looking at next school year. It feels odd to say that, but next school year is almost here, before we know it. So we want to make sure that we are prepared to hit the ground running for next school year as well. So glad to answer any specific questions about our work to date or potential work to come should you decide to renew. So I'd entertain any questions, or if you would like me to clarify anything that I've shared.
Unfortunately, I was rushing and I left my questions at home, so I gotta kind of figure this out.
You're fine.
When we first contracted with Mozzie, um, did, did the company submit a prior year final expenditure report when we first hired you? Because I can't remember.
So when you first hired us, we would have been providing training to your existing staff so that they would have turned one in. And yes, one was turned in when we very first started working with you.
It was turned into the board or to the,
So the financial end reports normally go straight to the state. Most boards don't have a board policy that final report would go to them directly. Although I'd be glad to provide, we have copies of all of those. If you would like to see them, be glad to give those to you as well.
I would appreciate it, because I was just trying to figure out, what monies were, what funds were not turned in, or what, not the past year, when you first started, up until this date, if you understand what I'm saying. Have all funds been, returned, or whatever? Kind of give us a breakdown on how that works after we first hired you, after we, you first took over.
Right,
So that our audience could know.
Okay, understood. Yeah, so once you have hired us, the only funding that has been returned to the state would be two examples. One would be some of the federal pandemic money that had to be contracted before we started working with you. And so we had alerted you all in some of those memos time ago that there was some money during the time we were working with you that had some unused funds from before. I have to speak more into the mic? Okay. I was trying to use my teacher voice, and it's not working very well. Is this any better? Just moving it closer is better? Okay. So that would be one. The federal pandemic money, there was some. If you remember, the federal government put a pause on some of that money. And they required it to be executed in a contract, and so some of our predecessors did not fully execute it prior to us starting. So that would be one. The second is it's due to, I believe last board meeting you would have had a memo in front of you talking about the need to return some funds. We have alerted you in our weekly updates that when last contract and this contract, when we've been reviewing all of your fund balances, we have identified some funds that are quite old that also need to have funds returned. So those would be the two instances. Of the funds we have managed directly, to my knowledge, there would not be any of dollars that would be turned back in. It would be us identifying things that were older than our time with you. That answer your question, Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Okay.
Someone else until I can get my thoughts together.
Yes, I would like to know, Mr. Harris, are you available on Zoom? Can you hear us?
Sorry, I couldn't take it off mute. Yes, I am here and I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. You were given the biweekly progress report. Do you have any questions that need to be answered as far as being the board's attorney?
I do not have any questions right now, no.
Okay. Mr. Nathan, okay, you gave us this here, the consulting paper here. Now, these check marks that's on the back, the present means you said these are the ones that's closed out? All these checks are closed out?
Correct. The past 2 months that we've been working with you, those summarize at a high level the deliverables or the accomplishments from the last 2 months that we've been working with you.
The ones in present?
Yes, correct.
So the ones in the future is to come?
Correct.
So, do we know the amount of any dollars that we've been allotted
Yes, yes. We
So
have
which ones have we been allotted for?
We have allocations for all of the federal funding streams. So Title I, Title II, and Title IV are the main three that we have been supporting you with. And yes, we have all of those allocations.
So what are the amounts?
Title I believe, is $6 million.
Well, we like to have that. You don't have that, you didn't bring that with you?
I don't have the exact number in front of me. They're very unique dollar amounts, but we're talking about, multiple millions of dollars. And I can get you the exact dollar amounts if you would like. I can send that over to Dr. Bernay and have that to you for tomorrow.
Okay, my reason being for asking too is because it's my understanding that some of this money that we have not had and we've been waiting on, some of this money has been taken out of our general funds to pay back. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So my question is,
Okay.
if we don't know how much money that we're going to get and how much money we got to pay back, we might just break even and still don't have no money.
Understood.
That's very important. Mr. Harris, is you on the line, please?
Yes, I'm here, and I do think that's a good question. If that information can be supplemented and sent over to Superintendent Bournet, I think that'd be helpful, but I agree, with Trustee Blake King that is information that would be necessary for the board to consider.
No, I'm Gibson King. I know that's the other King, but I'm Gibson King.
I can
I'm
answer,
sorry.
Ms. Gibson King, I can answer some of it now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sure, okay. So the main funding stream that you all receive that we support is Title I, and the state has approved that. So we're not at risk of that we've spent money that the state is not going to pay us back for. For Title I specifically, we've had Title I teachers and other supports happening in our schools since the beginning of the school year. And so the way the state operates is once they do approve it, which they did just a handful of weeks ago, the state lets us revert costs back to July 1. So one item that we will be doing is to make sure to submit a reimbursement, should you ask for our continued help, to recoup all of that money. So with Title I, we're not at that risk. For Titles II and IV, the other two main funding streams, we have turned in everything to the state. They've asked for revisions. We've turned that in as well. They have a multi-layer process, but we're told that the first layer has been approved at the state level. So we're just waiting for final sign-off. But to date, in all of the clients that we work with, I've never been unable to get the district its money it's entitled to. So I'm not worried about the fact that we would have all this money that we wouldn't be able to recoup.
Okay, all right, then thank you.
I got a question, Dr. Williamson. With regards to the school districts that have contracted with, is it typical that school districts can borrow from their general fund and typically get that reimbursement back once the grant's been awarded?
So not only is it typical, it is expected. So the way the federal funding, and am I still doing okay on my audio? I'm doing better. I'm following instructions, thank you. The way that it works now is the state requires the money to be issued on a reimbursement basis. So we have to spend our own money and then seek reimbursement. And unfortunately, one of the drawbacks of that process is if a grant takes a really long time to get approved, like it has for some of these we're talking about this year, the school district might be spending millions of dollars that it could be gaining interest on in its own accounts and investments, and really loaning it interest-free to the state and the federal government. It's really a state and federal rule that lowers their risk. Because they think if you have to spend your own money first, you'll do it maybe more wisely than if you were spending their money up front. So 100% of the school districts in Indiana have to spend their money first, then seek reimbursement for these funding streams that we're speaking about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to say that it was my understanding that we had Steve Dalton, who came in and gave us a budget meeting, and it was my understanding that the only way you could use operations money and borrow is from operation for education, education for operations. You can't use it for title. That's what was explained to us in the meeting that we had with Steve Dalton.
Right. So I know Steve Dalton. We partner with them, including with you all, the other districts as well. I would agree with this statement, but there's a nuance to it. So, yeah, so I would agree with what Steve Dalton states. When we are spending our money first, we create a fund number in our financial system that would label it as Title I. And we spend from that fund number. So we're not technically spending from the education fund or the operations fund. We have to set up a fund number in your financial system, and it runs into the red. So in essence, we are not spending from either one of those local funding streams. Now, the money has to come from somewhere. So if it's coming from the specific Title I fund that's running into the red, it does impact your overall cash balance. If I signed into your bank account would have a dollar figure that represents how much money you have in all of the respective funds across your entire district. So it is pulling from that, but because Indiana uses fund-based accounting, we're technically pulling it from a specific fund that has no money, and we're running it into the negative until the state will approve our grant, and then we can ask for the money back, and it will come back to zero. Essentially, at the end of the funding stream, it would come back to zero. So I agree with his statement, and there's a nuance to it of how it actually works in the system.
So my question right here said grant compliance, review, and documentation, future. So your company's not doing anything in the present with?
Right. So this will be a focus of the next phase, because right now our main priority was to get you the money. I had the same concern that Trustee Gibson King had, was you had a lot of money that was being spent without an approved grant. So a tremendous amount of our focus was getting that approved. And then this next phase is when we'll make sure that we have all of our documentation for future audits. We're doing some of it as we go, but this is at a high level of a summary.
Okay, one more question. Other than yourself, who else, since our title person is no longer working with you, who else is helping, in our administration that's aiding, or you're talking to? The superintendent I know, is someone in financing, the CFO or whomever, are they working in conjunction with you also? Or is it just one person?
Yeah, so we have biweekly scheduled meetings where we work with Luce, which is the administrative assistant, as part of that team. And then in very close contact with Ms. Simmons, Dr. Yanders, and Dr. Bournet. At times, there are other individuals. So for example, the past 2 months, we had an individual consultation with every one of your principals to go over how things were going, do they want any changes, and so on. So there are other people, but the 3 in the room, plus Ms. Perez, are the main 4 that we collaborate with pretty much daily. I think I talked to Leela and Dr. Yanders and Dr. Bournet about every day on something.
One more question. So with this new contract, what would be different than what we have from the old contract?
All of these funding streams have, different reports and deliverables that are due at different times of the year.
Okay.
And so extending our contract, in essence, is providing you, we're serving right now as your federal grants director. So it's making sure that you have someone in that seat that is accomplishing. So like this spring, we'll be making sure that the current school year's funding stream is closed out, and then having conversations for next school year so that day one, hopefully, there's teachers and programs in place and the grants get approved faster. So it's really just making sure that you have capacity because the different grants have different duties that are due at different times.
So I guess for the future, is this second contract that you want us to approve? Is that what this is for?
So this is summarizing what we would accomplish if you decide to renew. This is not the contract itself, but yes, you have, I believe, Dr. Bernay, you've shared a copy and it's available to the board.
The question with regards to submitting the award for board approval, is that something that's specified in the actual description as far as whether it's a reimbursable loan grant or an actual grant? So in other words, just say for title, mentioning the programs from the various principals, elementary schools, whatnot, do you consider do we get an approval of that from the state? And if so, once it gets approved by the board, is it something that your firm would sort of describe whether it's a reimbursement type loan grant, or whether it's a straightforward grant?
Right. So most of the grants from the state are reimbursable. There's a handful that are not. The ones that we are supporting you with are all reimbursable. That's really a federal rule. So if it's federal, it's expected to be reimbursed, including food service. We pay to feed kids and then we get paid back. If it's state, some of those truly are given up front, but those are rather rare to be given, money up front. When the state does approve our application in the award memo, it does dictate these types of rules of how it operates and so on. In most school districts, their board policy, because there are a lot of reports that go with all of these funding streams, most school boards authorize the central office to be taking care of those types of reports for them. Should you all decide to renew, I'd be glad to, if there's different types of reports that you would like to see in addition to or in place of the reports we've been giving you, glad to give those to make sure that you're in the loop and are aware of what's going on. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
And it seems like, since we are talking about federal grants that are allocated to the state, they sort of have their way of dispersing those funds to local districts.
Right. Yeah, it's federal money that's state administered because, the closer you can administer it to who's the eventual recipient, then usually the, more nimble it can be. So all of this federal money, yes, is given first to the State Department of Ed, and that's who we apply to in order to receive the funding. They ultimately have the initial layer of oversight for us, so they do the audits between their staff and State Board of Accounts.
In terms of this year's funding allocation to the states, this is coming from the Department of Education. Have you seen, or any other departments that handle the funds, have you seen any delay in dispersing federal dollars to states this year or in the past?
Right. So last summer, I believe on June 30th, we got an email close to 5 p.m. that said we're not releasing the money tomorrow, July 1, when we normally would have received it. So this summer, there was some turmoil with it. Eventually, about 3 weeks later in July, the U.S. Department of Ed did release the money to the states after whatever review, whatever they considered their review. The budget bill that just passed, so, the fact that the federal government wasn't closed for more than a day or two, that was because very recently the federal government just passed its budget for everything other than HHS. And that money funds these grants we're talking about for next school year. In that bill, the Congress specifically added language that would prohibit the U.S. Department of Ed from delaying the money again. So I believe they were not happy with that pause last year. They added some guardrails to prevent it. So that will further help us. Our goal would be to start planning the funds now so that we can submit them right away and get approval much faster so that, there's not the type of delay that we're talking about this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with that being said, was the delay caused by us not completing paperwork, or was it just something that that affected the whole state?
Right.
Both.
Both. Thank you.
But
Okay.
Any other questions? I do want to open it up to the audience as well. Is there any questions from the audience with regards?
I do have a couple questions.
Trustee Gomez.
Trustee Smith, in response to her comment or question, you said there was federal pandemic money. There were unused funds. Do you have the dates of those unused funds?
So I can get it to you in writing, but I know that there were 3 rounds of ESSER money. That was the name of the federal pandemic funds. And prior to us working with you all, you did have forfeited funds in ESSER 1, the first round. Off the top of my head, it was around $500,000
said forfeited, right?
You said
that we forfeited, yes.
Right. What ESSER was that one now?
That would have been ESSER 1. And these are off the top of my head. I would love to confirm in writing and be glad to do so. ESSER 2, when we started working with you all, we were only able to manage and carry out the funds that had been encumbered, meaning a contract signed, by September 30th of 23. And so there were some funds that were not fully committed by that point. And then with ESSER 3, there were also some funds that were forfeited, primarily due to, one, the federal government did pause our ability to claim all of the funds. And then 2, if there were any changes to work orders after the fact, we had to have all those contracts executed by September 30th of 24. And so there were some funds that were forfeited as part of that as well.
So that's when we first hired Mozzie. Was it 23 when some of those funds were forfeited?
It was 24. So
24.
when we started working with you all, again, off the top of my head,
Yeah.
you had about $25 million of ESSER 3 funds, and about $20 million of it had not been spent.
Right.
So we had about 5 months to encumber $20 million, which it's rather difficult for a government agency to encumber that much money that quickly. We did do our best effort. A lot of the reports that were part of the prior communication, I believe I spoke to you all at least once or twice, giving updates on that. We did try and had believed that we were going to get all of that encumbered, but there was a small amount left. In comparison, it's still a big number. Off the top of my head, it was maybe around $1 million. So we were able to get around 19 out of the 20 million. From my memory, I can get you exacts, fully carried out and encumbered in that short amount of time.
And this all happened because of lack of not following through and so on and so on, correct?
I would agree that when we very first started working with you all, at the
Yes.
time, I had shared some concerns about not just with ESSER, but some mismanagement of not unallowable use, but just lack of implementation of the money. So we were trying to come in and quickly implement it allowably. And so, yes, that would definitely have played a part in both of the scenarios here that we're talking about.
So that's when you came, that's when we hired you to try to correct, when we found out we had this problem.
Right,
I remember that.
right.
In your second report, it says that you currently lack the methodology used in previous calculations and are unable to trace the calculations or processes involved. Can you expound on that?
Yes, Trustee Gomez. So the calculations that we're talking about in the second report, the federal funding that we're speaking to, some of that money has to be shared with the non-public schools that are in your area.
Yes.
And so one of the first things that we did was we reached out to each of the non-public schools to, one, make sure that they had been met with, because it's a condition of receiving the funding. Two, have you gotten your dollar amount for this school year yet? If so, can you share that with us? And some of them had their dollar amounts, some did not. When we asked them what data, because they have to provide data to us so that we can calculate it, not all of them were able to do that. And so when we were signing into the state system, we have to apply for this money through the state portal. There were numbers in there that we just really could not validate. So one thing that did take us quite a bit of time was we went to each non-public school and said, I need your data now, because we wanted to calculate it. We calculated it again, and the previous numbers given to the non-public schools were higher than our numbers. As an estimate, I mean, maybe $100,000 higher. And we were able to keep more of the funds within School City than what would have been allocated without our help. Obviously, we want to be fair and follow the rules, but we want to get the right amount of funding to the right people. No more, no less than what anyone's entitled to. So the previous numbers given to them were high, and we were unsure of how they got those numbers, so we recalculated and made sure it was correct.
On in your third report on January 23rd, on the last page, you state, several building leaders demonstrated a lack of familiarity with the funding and spending plans associated with Title I, which resulted in both underspending and overspending in certain instances. Could you expound on that? And I have a follow-up question when you're done.
Yeah. So when we set up individual appointments with each of the principals, we pulled up each school level budget. Title I, the reason why we say Title I schools, we don't have Title II schools and Title IV schools. We only use the term Title I schools. That's because that funding stream does have to flow down to the school level. So we met with each principal, pulled up their budget, and said, here's what the previous team member wrote. Does this sound accurate to you? Are
When you
these the
say
positions?
previous team member, who do you referring
Ms.
to?
Stovall.
Okay.
So we showed them the grant that was submitted that wasn't approved and said, is this accurate? So we gave principals the opportunity to fix any changes and give us those edits. And then as part of those conversations, at times, they would state they thought something was in the grant and it wasn't, or something was in the grant, and vice versa. So that's what we're talking about, the underspending and overspending of just principals did not have a good understanding of what their budgets were.
Because of lack of information? Was that the reason why? Or lack of communication from
Yeah.
the title person?
Yeah, since we weren't working with you during that time, I would just have to guess in
Yeah,
that,
well.
lack of collaboration, communication, I'm assuming all of those things were part of it.
So a title person should communicate with all principals for funding, for title, for grants, for whatever each school needs. I know what I'm saying, I'm just trying to explain it.
Understood.
I think you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So the title person is responsible for all of that,
Right.
for making sure that the schools, that we have to pay out, like for the vouchers or the private schools or whatever, that's a part of that also. That's a part of that position, right?
Correct.
And then per school, every school principal should have an expenditure account or whatever,
Right.
and that's supposed to be submitted. None of that was really done. Am I correct?
It was done, but whether it was done in collaboration with the principals so that they were on the same page,
Okay.
that led to our comment that Trustee Gomez was referencing in the report, that there were some misunderstandings and discrepancies between what I saw was turned into the state and what the principals thought were in their budgets.
Okay. So let me just ask you hypothetically, with this Title I money, there's certain things that you can and cannot do.
Correct.
Just hypothetically, was some of that money used that should not have been used in Title I?
To date, our review of the expenditures from this year, I would say no. There weren't any funds that were on unallowable expenses. But because the grants weren't approved, we were not spending at the rate that we should. So when we're talking about big picture, about underutilization and forfeited funds, a lot of that is timeliness, because as we mentioned with the ESSER money, it takes a little while for governments to spend money because you have to approve contracts, you have to hire people. So it can lead to the funds not being as effective. So we had more funds unused than what I would have liked at that point of the year.
Again?
Yes. Yeah, so we do have, now we're going to work very hard to make sure that we don't have any funds forfeited. But yes, when we started working with you in December, there would be more funds than what I would have liked were available at that point in time.
That should have never happened.
But you said that we had some funds that was forfeited, right? You did say that, right?
So what Trustee Smith was asking would be for this year's grant. So for example, when we started working with you in December, about half of the school year was over. Theoretically, half of the funding should be spent by that point, and it was far less. So it's not that it was forfeited in December. Now, I gave a couple old examples of the ESSER money and then the board memo that you all would have reviewed last time that had some older funding streams. But for this year's money, we still have time. We have through September 30th.
Of what, 26?
Yes, we still have time, but in order to stay on track, like I mentioned, if half the year is gone, about half of the dollars should be gone too. So we do have some catch up to do.
I'll come back to the question. I'm going to go to report 4.
Okay.
On the last page, you said you had
What date is that?
January 30th.
January 30th?
It's the last page.
Okay.
Your report reads, as initial work was hindered due to barriers around access, establishing shared systemic organization and filing systems are highly encouraged. What barriers are you referring to here? Hindered due to barriers around access,
Right.
establishing shared systemic organization and filing systems.
Right. So one example would be what we already spoke about the non-public school data, making sure those calculations were correct. Others would be, for Title I, as an example, there are rules where you have to have an annual meeting at the beginning of the year with parents, where you tell them, hey, we're a Title I school, that's what this means. And ideally, the title director would have gathered all of that when it happened, so that we make sure it happens. You know, what gets measured gets done. And so that would be an example of, in December and January, school-wide plans. Every Title I school has to have a school-wide plan. So Dr. Yanders was a good partner with us of reviewing all those with the schools to make sure if we're audited that we had those in place. So those would be a few examples about things that just were not readily available that we had to ask for to make sure that they were done.
So that meeting with Dr. Yanders was in December?
To meet with the principals, we did that in December and January with Dr. Yanders.
Okay. I guess this question's for Dr. Bournet. Dr. Bournet, didn't we approve a training session for principals relative to Title I? I think when Dr. Williams had presented some of his concerns to the board, I think I shared that a number of principals I've talked to have just said that, you know, systemically or traditionally, they've had some difficulty in that. And then I thought that we had approved some level of training for principals relative to the title programs.
Yes, we had meetings with our principals at the beginning of the school year regarding their Title I funding and application, as well as meetings on how they are going to allocate them for building level expenses.
I guess my final question is, for all your future proposals here, there's 8 proposals that you have in front of us. I feel that we're essentially paying twice for the same service right now. What would be your thoughts on the current title federal grants person fulfilling these 8 duties here?
Right. So one service we do offer is what we're presenting to you is for our team to serve as your federal grants director. And so it's my understanding right now, you currently do not have one that's present. And so other information about whether they're getting paid, when they're returning, double duty, that's just not information I have. I mean, that would be more privy to the board. But our main goal right now is, you know, our work with you all has prevented, you know, more funding being forfeited, far, far more than what the cost of our service is. And so we want to try to get the money to kids, families, and teachers. So that's our goal of presenting our help so that the district can continue moving forward. And how you handle the other pieces of your question, that I would defer to you all.
Thank you.
I do have one last question. In terms, as it pertains to your contract, what type of instrument or how would you inform the principals in terms of the balances that they may have? Do you do that on a monthly basis? Because obviously I see a disconnect with principals not knowing how much they have throughout the year.
Right, understood. So the Title I grant was just approved a couple weeks ago. And so one of the things, in order to 100% give an exact figure, the reconciliation memo with the balances that I believe you all looked at last time, with those dollar amounts with some dormant funds, those can impact the current years as well. And so we're hoping to seek resolution for that as well. But yeah, I would say monthly is not a problem to be able to give it to principals. I think also it's my understanding that we're upgrading our financial system to Boyce at what time frame?
They're in the process of now.
Okay.
So it's just starting.
Okay. And so maybe fiscal year 27? Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna let RDS go until we do 1 full year on course.
Okay.
So we're gonna run side by side.
Okay. So the reason why I asked that question to clarify is our current system is quite antiquated. About 80% of the state uses the new system that you all have selected. It sounds very nerdy for me to say I have a favorite financial system, and it's the one that you all have selected. So it's much more user-friendly that is able for us to give much easier real-time reports that would facilitate central office and principals as well. So some of the difficulty has been that system of getting data from it, having it reported out correctly. But that's not an excuse. It still can be provided. So I look forward to meeting with the principals again to give them an update on their funding streams very soon if you all decide to renew our support.
Thank you.
I did think of one more question. Going back to this chart that you show, again, 8 future plans, and it looks like you've done about 8 current from prior SCEC to present. Are you, am I to read this correctly, and that none of this was done, these check marks in the first 2 columns, that none of this was done prior to you coming on board?
That would be a correct read, or it would be minimal if it was done.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's a no. Yeah, look at it. But I just want to ask one question, one more question here.
Trustee Gibson King.
Thank you, Rodriguez. So the schools that do not, St. Stan's is one of the schools that we have to get the title dollars to.
Correct.
I don't know if it's, what else, Dr. Bonet, other schools we have to give to, St. Casimir?
St. John Bosco,
So do-
St. Casimir.
So do they have this, do they have their titled funds? Because we have to approve it for them to get theirs. So I just want to make correction, ask that question, do they have their money?
So
Did you say-
we spend on their behalf, so we're not allowed to send them the money like the state sends it to us. But we have met with all of them. We've finalized their budgets with their input. I believe we have one non-public school that we've had a really hard time getting a hold of. Yes. But for everyone else that's responded, and we've reached out to that one respective non-pub 4 or 5 numerous times. They have their numbers, and we've given them authority to proceed with their activities. So yes, they have that. But ultimately, the dollars stay with us. We have to spend it on their behalf. But at
So
least
when
they
we
have
get,
the-
okay, so they could, so what you're saying is they can go ahead on and do what it is that they're gonna be doing with their title dollars, even though it's not here. But we're holding it, and then we'll give it to them. Is that what you're saying? Explain that again. That ain't making no sense to me.
I know. It is confusing.
Yes, it
The
is.
federal funding is very confusing. So not only do we have to front the money for spending for our own public schools, we have to front the money for the non-public schools as well. So we have an approved grant. The activities are approved. We've been doing the activities with the non-public schools, input. And then we get paid back from the state. So we do everything on their behalf, and then the state pays us just like they pay us for our own schools.
Okay, so I'm to take it that the funds that we're using, education and operational funds that we're using now, we're using our money for them too. Is that what, how we doing that?
Yeah, we are
Okay, that's-
using our cash
yeah, you
balance.
meant that. So we got
So
our
that same
school-
funding stream, that same fund account that we'll set up. So 4126, for example, we run that into the red. And that funding that we run into the red, that account, is not just our spending, but it's the non-public school spending. So it's really a condition of the federal award. The state will not give us our money unless we do that exact same process for the non-public schools. If you poll every public school system in the state, they would say they wish the process did not work that way. They'd rather the state give it to the non-public
Yes,
schools.
yeah.
But when federal money goes straight to non-public schools, they are held to certain rules that right now they are not held to since the money flows through us. So they get services, but not the dollars directly.
Okay, one more question. So how many schools do we have to, how many schools is it, Dr. Brown? You said, how many schools?
How many non-public schools?
Yes.
We have St. Kaz, St. Stan, St. John Bosco, John the Baptist, Bishop Knoll. And then, yeah, we have a couple non-public schools that have very, very small numbers of our children. So we work with the neighboring school districts, and we, can send the money to them, and then they do it on our behalf when they only have like 2 of our children or 5 of our children. But those that we named out loud are the ones that have the bigger
So
numbers.
that's about 6, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Yes, ma'am.
6 schools. Okay, well, I just want to ask one more question, that you give us a summary of what we discussed here?
Yep,
Appreciate that.
absolutely, I can do that.
Okay.
I believe we are recording this, and so I'll go back and watch it and summarize and put in writing, and whenever I said I'll give you the exact number, I can add that piece to it too.
Okay, thank you.
Following that up, is in your contract, have you had discussion to identify the gaps that you found in this whole program?
So one of the very first things that we did for you all was an evaluative report. That was middle of 2024, that identified some of those gaps. But I'd be glad to provide an update of, some of the other issues. I think, the sheet that we have in front of you visually describes some of that too, that in December, I would have expected more of those tasks to be done. And if they were started, we struggled to find the documentation. So, but I'd be glad to provide an update if you would like.
I think that would be helpful. And just for the record, for those who may be watching or in the audience, you did work with the Title I or federal grants person when you started on this whole journey, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
This is just something I want to ask. Now, in the future, if we do your contract, we will be informed on just about everything, because we don't need to go back from 2023 to 2027. We're not going to do that anymore. That's a no-no. I made that perfectly clear once before. I'm saying it again. This is it. We're not going to make this mistake again with anyone that's not able to perform their duties, that we lose monies. This is not going to happen again. So now, I hate to sound like we need you to give us a report on everything, but we need to know exactly what's going on at all times. Even if, and with the superintendent, I know he's a superintendent, but when it comes to finances, emails should go out to us, letting us know where we are. Because, to find out once before that we lost money, had to send money back, and now come back, and hopefully we don't have to send any back. I'm just saying, we're not saying you have to answer to the board, but just give us, like Trustee Gomez said, give us an update on where we are, because we're responsible for our tax dollars. We're responsible to answer these questions from our community. And if we don't have any answers, then there's no need for us to be here or even these schools, because then we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Understood.
So I'm not saying you owe us an explanation on everything that you do, but like Trustee Gomez said, it would be nice to have common quarterly meetings and letting us know exactly what's really going on, so that we can face the giant before it grows
Right.
any bigger.
Right, understood. Yeah, I would add, and this sort of piggyback somewhat Trustee Gomez was asking about, our previous engagement with you all was really to train your staff. What we're proposing to do is to be your federal grants director. We have several school districts who hire us permanently, and we are their staff that carry out these tasks. And so if you've ever had to teach someone versus doing it yourself, there's a difference between those two pieces. And so all of our clients have different preferences and working style. And so whatever would allow you all to feel informed, to be able to respond to your constituents, give you the type of reports that you need, I'd be glad to do so, because we, instead of training that person and expecting them to do it, we would be that person. And I can provide, nothing that you all have asked for today is unreasonable, and I have no problem with providing that.
Yeah, if I can add to Trustee Gomez and Trustee Smith's request, sort of like a monthly reconciliation report
Okay?
of all schools. This would also allow us to see exactly where they're at in terms of how they're spending their funds.
Okay.
Maybe that would be helpful as well.
Understood.
Any other board questions? I'd like to turn it over to the community as well. So is there any questions from the community? Please step forward. You can use my mic.
Oh, yeah, okay, you want to take this mic?
In order to,
Does
Yeah.
Mr. Nathan have a mic? He don't have a mic?
No, I do. If you
Yeah.
would like to use mine as well,
Oh,
that's
there's one
fine.
over there, Princella. He has a mic there. Oh.
I would like to know, for all that you talked about today, is this available to the community? Because I'm one of the people that do not go online for stuff that happens. I'd like to see it right up close.
Right.
Because it would have been nice if you had gave us that first piece of paper,
Okay.
that one. Because we're sitting here looking like dummies, and we just only hear what you say, but I'd like to see it in black and white, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I'd be glad to send it to you directly if you want to give me your contact information. And then Dr. Bonet will have a copy of it as well. And glad to share it that way also. I'm assuming, Ms. Bigham, if they contact you at the board secretary level, they could get a copy that way too. So whatever is easiest for you all, glad to share any or all of those ways.
We'll make it available.
Okay.
there's a mic there. Just make sure it's on. Oh, yeah, just make sure it's on.
So I also didn't know exactly, I came in on the tail end, so my assumptions on the contract for the Mr.
Mazi.
Mozzie. So I do want to say a couple of things. I watched a program or one of the board meetings, and we had someone who was a Title I director kind of discuss the funding that previously was done. And I'm saying this just as they're asking for information as a board. I was a former board member from, I think, 27 to 23.
Okay.
So my reason for me telling you what I'm going to tell you is just out of knowledge for them. So when it comes to the ESSER funds, yes, we do understand ESSER funds were given back, but this board might not, well, some of them on the board might not understand that there were certain criteria that those ESSER fundings had to be spent on. So because of that, that's the reason why we had to give certain monies back. We also did not know all the funding we had because it was coming in at different times, if I remember correctly. So then we could not spend it as it was coming in. And plans that were given to us as the board did not come into later. So Ms. Smith and Mr. Rodriguez both should know some of that. They have background knowledge. The other thing with what they should receive is, one, what those fundings were supposed to be used for ESSER. The other thing is, realistically, and this is my opinion, you might be able to chime in on this, did some school districts give ESSER funds back? Like, is it realistic to say that some schools did give money back from that? Because there was so many stipulations that had to be used. So am I correct in saying that?
I would say very few did, but was School City of East Chicago the only?
No.
But at one point in time, there was a dashboard on the state website. I believe they've taken that down. But at one point in time, small handful did have funds that were forfeited. Strong majority spent every dollar.
In this document that was given by the superintendent, and not the superintendent as well as the Title I director, it stated something in the sense of prior to 2017 to 2023, Title I funding wasn't given at the correct time, or we ended up turning in our documents late, so possibly not receiving all of our funding. Like I saw that and it was alluding to that. I know for a fact that we turn in all of our title dollars in on time from 2017 to 2023. The only thing is that we never received the correct, this is the final amount, because there were so many changes within that. Is that correct how title works? You submit in June, you don't get the final amount basically till October, or September, October, after all you end up doing.
yes,
Like, can you explain that process to them so they could know? Because I don't want any misconsumption of us saying we didn't submit on time by any means.
Right. So just to, in case you're not aware of my background, during that time frame, a large portion of that time frame, I was the state director of Title I at the Indiana Department of Education, and so I'm very familiar with the process because it was overseen by me personally. And so the way the federal government works is we give you an estimate prior to July 1, and then we give you a final in October. But when it came time to which school districts forfeited funds and which didn't, all school districts have that same time frame, same timeline. And from my time at the state, a very small handful forfeited and a strong majority forfeited nothing. So could that have contributed? Yes, but I would say that that shouldn't be the reason why we were in the situation we were in, that the district staff could have worked within the same rules that apply to everyone to prevent any money turned back.
And maybe, I guess I'm alluding to, that's probably what they should receive in their packet, that you're gonna, what the timelines consist
Yeah.
of, so they could fully understand, because I know I didn't have it at first.
Yeah.
My other thing is that I'm glad that the school district is looking into somebody to come in and help with the funding and where the money is going. I also would suggest to look at your other funding contracts that you have, because now if you have your CFO and you have Mozzie, then you might not need all of your funding contracts in order to figure out what the money and where it goes.
Yes.
They can't hear you. Yeah.
I'll scoot over.
Okay, I'll go right here.
Sounds good.
Okay, my question is, if you're proposing to be a district Title I director for our district, did I hear you say that? Am I correct that you could be the person who handles Title I?
Yes.
Okay, so how will you be hands-on? Will you be located? Will you be in-house if you were to do something like that? Or?
Is it okay if I stay?
Sure,
Mike?
absolutely.
Right, so our model, the pricing that I've given you all does have, if you compare it to an in-house everyday person, we're charging you a cheaper price. And so there is some cost savings to the district. One of the reasons there is a cost savings is most of the work we do, to answer your question, is virtual. So we're not going to be in person every day. However, every day we would be working for you. Most of what we do, 99.9% is using a computer. Obviously, being in present and having these conversations like today is still important. But that's part of the model, is we're able to save you money because we are operating virtually.
Okay.
Did you have anything else?
Sure,
Okay.
and follow up to that. I see Title I as a program that's relational, as opposed to, well, I don't want to say contractual, but the whole piece in interacting with the community as a director. So that's why I asked that question. Also, too, family and community engagement. I did hear you say that the parent involvement meeting, there was no parent involvement meeting? Did I hear that?
No,
Yeah,
can I
go
say?
ahead.
Yeah, so what I stated that I believe you're alluding to is there were parent involvement meetings at the school level, but when it comes time to an audit where the state comes and says, show us, that's what we were missing was the evidence that it happened, not that it didn't happen at all.
Okay,
We
I
just
see.
needed the paperwork
I
behind
see
it.
how important that is. I did family and community engagement for many years here, and it was very important that we did do a meeting for parents every year at the district level as well as in every school. So just trying to get a clear understanding of that. Also, too, she asked for the paper that, what was that, with the list, the checklist that you had. Is it okay that the community get through a report as well? Is that something that you could share?
So generally speaking, I'll defer to Mr. Harris if he disagrees, but anything we provide to the board usually is public knowledge.
Public
So
information.
Yes.
almost always, and I would always let Mr. Harris decide what's allowed and what's not, but from my perspective, you're a taxpayer, it's a public school district, you would have a right to be able to do a records request or request that information through other means.
So I can comment, if I can comment on that real quickly? Sure. So I agree with Dr. Williams' comment that is public information. I think the only question would be for Dr. Bournet, for him to come up with a plan on how he wants to communicate that most effectively with the public. Sometimes it's by posting it on the website. Other times it could be making it available through a designated staff member. But generally speaking, I agree, it's public information.
So it will be posted on the website, and it'll be under the federal grants section as well as in our finance tab. So we can find it in multiple places.
You have another question? Okay.
So will there be other opportunities for people to apply for the Title I director position? Is that something, I think that's a question probably for Dr. Bournet.
Yeah, so that particular staffing issue will be addressed at a later time after the board has had opportunity to discuss personnel and the superintendent's administrative restructure for next year, which is one of my goals.
Last question, Title I grant, where can we find that at? I know that's public information as well, because I've been on looking for it and I can't seem to find it, so.
Is it okay? I'll answer that question. So that also is public record as well. So it's in a state portal, but we can download it and give it to you. So it is public record. So I will ask for Mr. Harris's approval, of course, but in my opinion, it's public record. So that is something that can be provided.
I had one question I want to ask about Parent University. Now, what are those dollars used for, ESSER dollars? What funds is those dollars used for?
I believe we still are through Title I, yes. Yeah, we're still doing Parent University through Title I because I think it was a well-liked and successful program, and with ESSER being gone, it is something that we've continued through Title I.
Hey, what is Parent University? Can you explain that?
So it's my understanding that, and Dr. Anders, this is more of your wheelhouse with how it's operating, right? Yeah, so, I do think it's a program that's trying to equip families to be able to, support and engage with their child's education. High level, that's really supporting parents in that way. Is there anything you would like to add, Dr. Anders?
I can speak to
Oh,
that.
Dr. Burnett,
So
sorry.
Parent University is one of the ways that School CDB Chicago fulfills in compliance with its parent engagement efforts. In addition to Parent University, we do have a number of parent engagements at our school level as well as district-wide.
I just want to make a statement.
Trustee Smith.
I'm sorry. Vice President, Trustee Rodriguez. To Ms. Hernandez's remark, when the ESSER dollars first came, And we were given, the public was giving a public community involvement regarding Esther's dollars. Remember that? And there was a lot of stipulations. But you know, as one of my friends say, I'm gonna call if the baby ugly, I'm gonna call it ugly. Some of that was our fault, the board, because we kept denying. When they first gave us those Esther dollars, he came in here and told us, you gotta spend this money now. You cannot wait, because as you wait, things go up. Everybody in America is doing projects with the Esther dollars. And you have to get on board and you have to do it now. Unfortunately, because we kept having to change as superintendents, we kept having to change board members. You understood, I understood, he understood. New members didn't understand. Nobody knew what the hell was going on with the Esther's dollars. So we just kept procrastinating. And we kept procrastinating. We kept saying, no, we don't want this. No, we don't want that. And I'm just saying, unanimously, we lost it, a lot of it. Because when the gentleman got here, I think it was Senator and Dalton, got here and told us what we need to spend this money on right there and there. We, as a board, waited 2.5 years to even put anything in place. So like I said, I'm not gonna just say it's all everybody else's fault. It was some of our fault too, because we kept procrastinating with it. And I'm not one, I don't hide my feelings, I don't hide what I say. Some of us that was our fault, because we couldn't come together as a board to make a rational decision to put an HVAC system in a school. When they told us that those equipments and all of those things were gonna be, they were gonna be, companies was gonna be making them, everybody in the United States was using those dollars. Can somebody in here remember that? And they told us, you gotta use the money. So some of that was the board's fault, whether we want to admit it or not. And the other part of it was, we had no structure, and we had no really understanding on what those Esther's dollars. The CFO did the best she could in explaining to us, but periodically, we still had a disagreement. So I'm just gonna say that, I'm sorry we had to give some of that back, but we should have spent that right away. You give me that kind of money, I can spend it in 5 minutes. I don't have to procrastinate, because I already know what we needed. So I'm just letting you all, I'm letting the community know, I am who I am, and I just call it like it is. Some of it was our fault. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can
But
just.
trustee Smith, I want to thank you, because when all that happened, I was sitting in the audience. I wasn't on the board.
Yeah, and
So I do remember what you're saying. I was sitting in the chairs in the audience when all that happened.
And before Linda, 1 second. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you, Linda Randolph. I just want to give
sorry,
some
trustee
thanks. First of all, thank you, Nathan. I worked with Nathan at the state for about 4 or 5 years, and he constantly sent communication about spending title money. And I came from a district in Chicago where the principals were responsible for all of it, millions. And my clerks understood, you better move dollars into miscellaneous and buy $1 worth of paper clips. We do not lose money.
Nope.
And somewhere along the line, East Chicago didn't get that message clearly and understand it. I remember when I retired in 2007, one of the first board meetings I went to then, Ms. Yarowski from the State Department was at the old Lincoln School talking about the thousands that were going back. And what she did, she hired all kind of companies from Indianapolis to come up here and bring all those programs to East Chicago. So it's been going on a while, but then we've had a lot of changes. So we're going to get past all of the shoulda, woulda, couldas. And I want to also thank Simmons and Yanders, because when money was being found, they were running around trying to spend it. But like she said about HVAC, everybody wanting the same thing, everybody had extra money. At some point, the supply and demand is going to be an issue. So thank you to those who went that extra mile. Can you explain, Nathan, the selection of non-public schools? Is that done by the state? Because it seems now we have more Hammond schools that we're responsible for, but yet there's a Hammond Public District.
Yeah, so for Title I purposes, it's dictated in the law how this works, and it depends upon where the children live, not where they go to school. So, but that's for Title I only. For Titles II, III, IV, special ed, only schools that are in Hammond work with Hammond only. But for Title I, it's unique in that the funding follows the child. So if we have children that live in our district, but they go to Hammond, Gary, Maryville, non-public schools, they generate the same money per pupil, and we have to administer money. So like, it's my understanding Bishop Knoll, I think, is in Hammond's district, but they generate quite a bit of money from East Chicago because Bishop Knoll has a large number of kids that live in our district. So the funding follows the child based upon the address of the child.
Thank you, Nathan. I just wanted that clarified for the public because I get that question quite often. And finally, you know, for those of you who know me a long time coming to the mic, you have to inspect what you expect to happen. So if you expect those dollars to be spent appropriately, you have to do what? Inspect. Monitor, monitor, monitor.
Yeah, follow that money.
Is there any other questions
Just
from
one
the
more,
board?
since Ms. Randolph said something.
Trustee Gibson
Now,
King.
I've been hearing a lot about when the kids, the ADM count comes in, and the child decides to move or whatever, go to another school. Now, is there some kind of way that, that the school can recoup the money from that school? I've been hearing a lot about they can get these dollars from the other school. Is some true fact to that?
So for public schools, there's 2 count dates, October 1st and February 1st.
February, right.
And if a child is enrolled in the district on that date,
Yes.
you get, you know, half for the first count, half for the second count. You could be with School City of East Chicago from the beginning of the school year, leave September 30th. If you're not enrolled on October 1st, the school district does not get paid a penny for that child. It's the way current law and policy reads. Now, for non-public schools, if a child does leave the non-public school, then the state does impact the amount of money that the private school would receive. But in public schools, it 100% depends upon who was there on that date, October 1st or February 1st. And, you know, in order for that to change, that would take, you know, advocacy with our legislature because that's the current rule.
There's no truth to that then. The dollars, they just can go to another school and no money goes with it.
Yeah, it 100% goes to where the child is enrolled
Okay.
on those 2 dates for public schools.
And this, and to my understanding, this was enacted in 2011 where the voters voted on that or voted for their legislators to enact that in the General Assembly. The, what is it called?
The
Choice Scholarship Program.
Yeah.
So that's how the money, that's sort of, to me, and I can say this, was sort of the loophole, what created how monies were being sent to private entities, private schools. So, and we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Just for clarity's
Any
sake.
any other questions?
Just for
Trustee
clarity's
Gomez.
sake, there was some discussion back and forth on Title I and ESSER funds. The ESSER funds were run through who? Which position in the school district were ESSER funds run through?
The federal grants division, so the same director that would have overseen your Title I funds.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, so I guess that concludes our work session for today. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by trustee Smith. I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. All in favor?
Say, aye. Oh, okay.